Cubs REKAP podcast. I'm David Kaplan. That is Gordon Wittemyer with his, what is that, Wabash College, that mug, the W?
Pac-12 tournament time this week, buddy. It's time for the Huskies to make their move.
Yeah, exactly. Lose by about 22 against UCLA or whoever you end up playing, USC.
That's round two. That's the quarterfinal.
All right, let's get right into it. We have a lot of Cubs news to discuss. Kris Bryant hit a home run against the Cubs. We're going to touch on that. The Cubs threw a combined 7-pitcher no-hitter for the first time in the history of the franchise. They got a spring training no-hitter. So let's start with that. The pitching has looked pretty solid during the spring. Jamison Tyone threw 3 very good innings. We've seen Hayden Wesneski look good. And the best part of the news is Kyle Hendricks. We'll get into that in a moment. Gordon, a 7-pitcher no-hitter of the Padres. Now, I know the Padres didn't have all their good guys, but they had some good professional hitters in there.
Yeah, 3 or 4 of them in there.
And how many times have you and I been at spring trainings where we see some guy get his ass kicked and he's like, yeah, I was only throwing fastballs, so I was working on something rather than trying to get people out? I thought it was exceptionally impressive.
I agree, and I'm every bit as impressed, if not more impressed, by what it meant, what it said about the fielders, the run prevention part of this thing that is about fielding, because they signed a bunch of defensive guys. I don't know how many strikeouts there were in that game, but there were a lot of balls put in play, and they made all the plays. They've been playing some hellacious defense this spring too. And by the way, that combined no-hitter, they took it 2 innings into the next game too. So it was 11 consecutive innings of no-hit ball. That part of the game seems to be, spring training, to take it for what it's worth, but Padres did have some of their big guns in there. And, that's because that's what you expected. And then you start seeing it play out. Those are encouraging signs, no doubt.
No question that it's encouraging signs, and people I have talked to out there have said this pitch lab is a real thing, and they're not the only ones that have it. It's not as though they've got this proprietary.
No, and they were behind a lot of teams too. They were catching up, and they're still catching up.
That's not without that. That's indisputable. You're right, but now their pitch lab stuff is real. But as someone out there said to me, it's not like it's proprietary. We're the only ones doing it, but we have caught up. And that pitch lab looks like it is able to take good pitchers and make them better and maybe finding some diamonds in the rough as well. Now, Hayden Wesneski is a kid who we're not sure if he's going to make the team. He may end up in AAA, stretched out, ready to go until they bring him up. Maybe he'll be there opening day. But Hayden Wesneski today, as you and I are taping, Hayden Wesneski, an 8-pitch first inning, he is showing an ability
8 strikes, 8 pitches, 8 strikes.
Correct. He's showing an ability to use all his pitches and to think as a pitcher. He's not a 99-mile-an-hour, just roar back and blow you away. He's pitching, and that is what the Cubs are most encouraged about.
He's got stuff too. Let's not diminish him in terms of stuff. He throws hard enough, and he might have the best slider in camp. And they're teaching, this is a big thing in camp, right? They're teaching all these sweeping sliders. And by the way, I think there's some sticky stuff still going on out there in the game. I think the teams have figured out new ways to tack the ball. But nonetheless, the Cubs are getting some success with this slider. Wesneski's already got it. And Wesneski showed up with it. And it showed up again in that start on Monday. So he's I like him. I've said it before. I want to see him break camp in this rotation. I think that's their best shot to get off to a good start while we wait for your man, Kyle Hendricks.
Okay, so let's go to Kyle Hendricks. He threw his first real meaningful bullpen where it was not what they call one of those. He had, I think a week ago, what they were calling a get loose, low-level bullpen. Let me see how I feel after I throw a little bit, but not cutting it loose. He threw a full bullpen and came out and again today reported, no issues. I feel really good. That is amazingly positive for the Chicago Cubs.
Yeah, and let's be clear about this. That doesn't mean he's going to open the season on time or be in the opening rotation or anything like that. But it does mean that this idea of him coming back in May is very much alive, and all the signs point to it now. I mean, this is when he tried to throw last year. They shut him down. He tried to throw. They shut him down. He tried to throw. He got treatment. He tried to throw. He kept having setbacks. This time around, he's on a program. And he's thrown 10 bullpens on this slow and steady tortoise part of the tortoise and the hare race thing to get ready for when he might be back in May. And no setbacks. That is so friggin' huge for this team. If he's back and his mechanics are right when he gets back, it's like picking up an all-star caliber starter mid-season.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd go all-star caliber at this stage of his career, but what I would say to you was he's one of their leaders in their room. He's one of the most solid dudes that they have on their team, and his veteran presence makes everybody else in that rotation relax because they're going to get a professional effort every time he takes the ball.
But none of that freaking matters if he comes back and his mechanics aren't right and he's giving up hits because he doesn't have margin to work with. But when his mechanics are right, and he's locating and he's pulling the string on that changeup, then he's the guy we saw beat Clayton Kershaw. You know, even with a little less velocity than he had back then, because he's not a velocity guy. We all know that. But if he's right, it is like an all-star.
Yes,
and that matters a hell of a lot more than clubhouse. They got a lot of guys in the clubhouse.
Okay, so Gordon, I want you to go through in your mind, give me the strengths and the weaknesses of who you think breaks camp in 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks as the rotation. Take me through 1 through 5, how you think it'll play out and what you like about it and what you don't, and then I'll give you mine.
Well, we've seen Stroman and Tyone, the two veteran guys they picked up these last 2 off seasons. Stroman's going to pitch for Puerto Rico in the World Baseball Classic. So he's going to have competitive speed innings like Tyone won't, pitching in spring training games. So I like that, assuming that everything goes well and he comes back healthy and folds right into things. I like that. I like those 2 guys up at the front, veteran guys. They'll put the ball in play. They've got a really nice defensive team behind them. So I like that. Smiley got hit around the other day. Bryant hit a home run off him. Big deal. I mean, Smiley will be fine. He'll slot into that 4 or 5 spot. Justin Steele looked good. Remember, he didn't make his scheduled first start of the spring. And then by the time he threw a bullpen and came back, he looked good. So keeping him healthy is probably the most important part of that equation. And man, I'm telling you, I like Wisniewski. I know Adrian Sampson's a guy that's really shown a lot of guts and reinvented himself since he's been a Cub these last couple of years. But Wisniewski has stuff and upside, lots and lots of upside. And that's the guy I would like to see win that last job.
So, Gordon, as I look at this rotation, there isn't one guy. Like the White Sox have Dylan Cease. Dylan Cease is a Cy Young candidate from day one. He was a finalist last year. The fact he's an ex-Cub still bothers me, but you supported that stupid trade. But
it made sense at the time.
It did not. But anyway, that's for another day when I don't have anything else to scream at you about. The Cubs don't have one guy. Say again?
You got something to scream at me about now?
Not yet. Not yet. We'll see. I think I know where we're going to get into it, but we'll get to that in a second. The Cubs don't have one guy that if you said they have to win today to get in the playoffs, I don't think they have a pitcher where you go, I can start anybody. That's the guy. Maybe that will evolve as the season goes on. Maybe that's Stroman. Maybe that's Tyone. Maybe that's Kyle Hendricks. I don't know. Maybe it's Justin Steele, Hayden Wisniewski, whoever.
There's one guy.
I think this is as much depth as we've seen them have in their 1 to 7 than any time since they had their run 16, 17, 18.
I think that's probably true. You know, you could argue that they haven't had that type of a pitcher since 16 or 17.
Well, that's when they had Arrieta. That's when they had John Lester.
Right.
They had
And
a healthy,
Arrieta
much
wasn't
younger Kyle
quite
Hendricks.
that guy in 17. He definitely was in 15. He pretty much was in 16. Lester was that guy those 3 years.
Yes.
But then Lester began to decline.
And they had Darvish, but he was like 2020.
He was the last half of 2019 and what amounted to a third of a season in 2020.
Correct.
And you know, he was paid to be a guy out of the chute for you in 2018 and keep this thing going. And he was a failure in 2018. He had an elbow issue, but even when he was healthy, he wasn't pitching well. And that was the Tyler Chatwood year. So you really got to go back to when these guys were in the NLCS multiple years in a row to find anybody close to that guy that you would say, yeah, that's the guy that'll win us a playoff game.
So that's my question.
So
who is that guy today? Is that Stroman?
No. I mean, Stroman will compete. Tyone will compete. You know, those are kind of like the Kyle Hendrickses of that era. And Kyle Hendricks, like, always pitched big on the big stage. So, you know, that's actually pretty high praise, but it's not, these aren't the guys that are going to go out and just strike out the side, you know, 2 out of every 3 innings and be dominant. But there is a guy who's got enough ceiling left and enough to dream on. And he had 2 months last year that showed us something. Is Justin Steele. If Justin
has
Steele
great stuff,
is healthy, gets out of the gate strong, builds that confidence level off of last year, and shows some durability, because you really can't be that guy if you're a 5 2/3 innings pitcher. But if he can regularly come out and throw into the 7th, start after start after start, and dominate and put up zeros, he could become that guy by the end of the year.
And the fact he's a lefty is a really, really intriguing piece as well. All right, let me move on to another topic for you. Kris Bryant hit a home run against the Cubs the other day. Now, he did not have a good first year with the Colorado Rockies due to injury. His performance lagged, but mostly 95% because of injury.
Well, when he was on the field, he actually hit. He just wasn't on the field.
Not very much at all.
Right.
So do you believe there will ever be a time during that contract, he signed a lengthy $182 million deal, that the Chicago Cubs will be regretting letting him go? Or do you think privately in the executive suite, they're like, yeah, we're good?
Yeah, well, I know where you fall on this. And and actually, believe it or not, this isn't going to be a place for you to find justification in yelling at me. Because look, I can make the case and I would win the argument. He was their best hitter his entire career in Chicago.
Not entire career, but certainly during the glory year of 16.
His entire career, he was their best hitter. He wasn't always on the field. Sometimes he played through an injury, but he took the best at bat. He was the best hitter. They weren't going to sign him as a free agent. They tried to get him signed to an extension at one point. And as soon as it became apparent that that wasn't going to happen, he was the one guy out of that group that I felt they were probably justified in looking for an exit strategy with, even though he was arguably, like I said, their best hitter and one of their most versatile players. So he had a lot of value. Is he going to make them look bad? No. I mean, he's on the wrong side of 30 now, which doesn't mean he can't put up numbers, especially in Colorado. But I don't think there's ever going to come a day when they look at what he does under that contract and say, well, shoot, what if we'd paid him $30 million a year and got that? That's exactly what we needed, and he's making us look bad. I don't think that'll happen.
Okay, as I reported.
Wait. I'm going to say one more thing though. Mm-hmm. When he got that contract, I I can't. I think I wrote a column. I did. I wrote a column on it about he had this needle he could thread that still gave him a chance at the Hall of Fame because he
that's
now
a no shot.
What is now? I think it is now, but I think it became a slim shot to a no shot now. But he needed to maximize the front end of that contract in a place like Colorado, where he's not going to get dinged on the ballot for home splits because of what he already did in Chicago. So he would have had a chance to put up counting numbers, maybe get a few more All-Stars, maybe even compete for another MVP and be in the conversation for the Hall of Fame. That it would take a one hellacious finish to his career at this point for that to happen.
Okay, so as I reported multiple times, took my hits when Kris met with all you guys in the media, and I wasn't there that day, unfortunately. I don't know where Cap came up with that. I was never offered an extension. And then, well, I actually was offered one after the World Series in 2017.
You never denied that.
Huh?
That's not that wasn't the north of 200 million one, unless you count all these option years like Rizzo got on that.
He was offered, from what I was told by someone who would know without me throwing that person under the bus. He was offered guaranteed money north of $200 million. And then there were option years. And what I was told was they thought they were getting it done until the phone rang back. Yellow. Oh, hey, Scott. Yeah, we're dead.
I put that scenario privately to people off the record and had it denied. And publicly, as recently as not even a year ago, Bryant himself said that offer did not exist.
Okay. It's
for what it's worth. For what
do
it's
you
worth.
think the reason I brought it up is because it's been denied and confirmed, whatever. He plays for the Rockies now. Do you think if I could roll the hands of time back to the day Theo and Jed made that offer and have Kris accept said offer if it existed, do you think the Cubs are like, whew, are we glad he didn't take that, or they wish he had?
I think with everything else that happened to the team as well as the pandemic, yes, I think they breathe a sigh of relief. Front office all the way up to ownership. But had they been able to lock some of those guys up to some of the deals, take a look at what the Braves have done, right? With their young core. They've got 6 of their 8 position players in that opening day lineup that are going to be locked up to contracts. They're on contracts right now of at least 8 years each. And maybe 6 years each, minimum. And some of those are extremely team-friendly deals. Stuff that the Cubs weren't going to get done with their guys. They were young and good in a big market and won really fast and were all-stars. And they weren't going to accept those steeps of discount.
I'll tell you who else did a wonderful job doing that. That's Rick Hahn on the South Side.
Yeah,
he inherited the Moncada deal from the Red Sox, but he's locked up. They've got Tim Anderson
once in 2020, and they won a game. They made the playoffs once in 2021. Oh, and they won a game. How's that working out for him? Give me a break.
Hold on a second. You wouldn't like to have Luis Robert locked up and Eloy Jimenez locked up? And I think those are good signings. Tim Anderson was locked up on a deal. I got no issues with how Rick Hahn has done in terms of signing guys to extensions.
But okay, even if I give you that point and say that that's exactly what you would want, it's a different animal on the South Side.
Agreed.
With their market share, their market share, and the perception. And
they didn't win a World Series.
These guys not only won a World Series, they won the World Series.
Correct.
So for those guys, I mean, even Addison Russell was represented by Scott Boras at the time and wasn't going to accept
he turned down reportedly 5 for 35.
Yes. Exactly. That's my point.
$7 million a year. How is Korea treating you? He should have taken the money.
Should have taken the money, no doubt. And that would have been a terrible decision by the Cubs.
Terrible.
So and never mind the off the field stuff. On the field, that would have been a terrible decision for the Cubs.
Correct.
So it's just a different animal. But when you look at what the Braves did, if the Cubs could have found a way to do that on a higher scale, right? Because of their market size and their resources, and they got aggressive with that, somewhere between maybe the Braves and the Padres, right?
Mm-hmm.
Something like that. Then it might have been a different outcome, even through the pandemic. It might have been a different outcome coming through that. Maybe you keep Yu Darvish, who's pitched well for the Padres since then, and now he just signed another extension on that deal. And now you're competitive.
Speaking of the Padres, did you see the latest rumor is that their owner has green-lighted conversations to take place to try and extend Juan Soto and Josh Hader.
Yeah.
What in the hell is going on in San Diego that we're not seeing here?
Right after they extended Darvish, they tore up the last year of his deal and extended him for 5 more?
Yeah.
And then they tore up the last 6 years of Machado's mega deal and made it a new 11-year deal.
$350.
Yeah. $350. And Soto's getting more than that. Soto's getting more than $400.
Soto's getting probably $425, something like that.
I believe he turned down $400 plus.
But a lot of it was deferred.
Okay. But he might be getting $450 plus.
He might. He's absolutely
way younger than these other guys.
Okay, so how are they pulling this off in San Diego?
I'll tell you exactly how.
The White Sox have never had a contract bigger than $75 million. Never. The Cubs, who have revenue stream after revenue stream, have spent, I give them credit for what they've spent, but they haven't spent at the top of the market the last couple years. Are they going to be in play if Shohei Ohtani hits free agency? They should be.
I mean, to be clear, regardless of market size, the Padres are an aberration. They and the Mets are the outliers, right? But I'll tell you exactly what they're doing and how they're doing it. There is that much money in the game. When these teams tell you they're not, they're lying. There's one publicly traded company that owns a baseball team.
Liberty Media, the Braves.
They just issued their report for 2022, and baseball revenues for that company were $588 million. I did the math on this, and now I can't remember what it was. But let's say, but this is easy to figure out. Let's say that the average team is 18% less than that. In other words, roughly $500 million in revenue.
Okay.
That's a $15 million a year industry, or $15 billion a year industry. And that's more than what they've led us to believe the last few years. And if the Braves are average, it's like 17.5 billion. There's real money in this game. And by the way, this Bally Diamond Sports bankruptcy that's coming, it affects 14 teams that are broadcast on those platforms.
Mm-hmm.
This may not be the worst thing for baseball's overall revenues, because they've been looking for an avenue to maximize streaming. And if suddenly half the league is out of its contracts and they can do whatever they want and make their own rules, it might eliminate some of the territorial limitations and things like that. They might be able to package things the way they want. I don't know what that, I'm not an expert on that, but just reading about what MLB has wanted to do for years, hearing it even through the Cubs' perspective, and then seeing this play out, it's tempting to say, oh, the bankruptcy for these rights holders is going to hurt the teams. It may not. It ultimately may not. There's a lot of money out there, Cap, and that's how the Padres are doing it. It's a narrative, and it's a false narrative when these teams try to tell you that they need a salary cap and there isn't money in the game.
Okay, we are going to run out of time, so I'm not going to get into – I wanted to talk to you about the division and handicapping the Brewers, the Cardinals, and the Cubs, but I do want to spend some time with you because while he's not a Cubs pitcher, it is an MLB and life issue. Mike Clevinger learned on Sunday from MLB that there is going to be no punishment and that they did, according to MLB, an exhaustive investigation, talked to more than 15 people, thousands of electronic communications, texts and emails, whatever. And they said there was no evidence that he had violated the domestic violence policy with his girlfriend.
I don't know that was their comment. I don't know that was their exact quote on that.
I'll look up the exact statement, but you tell me what you think of it while I do that.
Well, I want to hear what you think of it. It's a touchy situation. Look, these investigations can only go so far. If you remember Addison Russell's investigation, arguably, well, certainly it wasn't as extreme as some of the stuff that came out, the allegations involving, like, for instance, Trevor Bauer. But the Addison Russell thing took more than a year. And part of that was in talking to people involved in the investigation was because there was a long period of time, better part of an entire year, where some of the principals involved, witnesses, as well as I believe the girlfriend, or it might have been his wife by then at the time, weren't fully cooperative. And then they became cooperative. So they didn't do anything for a while. They had a table. They didn't close the investigation. So that's what's different about this. So, but we just don't know everything behind the scenes. It was pretty explosive stuff that was out there. I like to think this means that maybe some of that stuff isn't true, but I have no way to know any of that stuff. It's good for the White Sox, right? I mean, they will get the pitcher they signed, and we'll see how it plays out. But this stuff is, I mean, it's just ugly when it comes out, and it's so much more serious than trying to talk about what it means for the team. Or he is apparently voluntarily going to seek some of the support systems that they offer.
If MLB determines that they want him to do that, he said, I'll cooperate with whatever they want.
That's a good thing. And by the way, that's what the alleged victim said she wanted.
Correct.
Yeah.
But the fact that the alleged victim went on a radio station, alleged horrific things, and MLB comes out and says, we didn't find any evidence that stuff happened or violated the policy. I found that, what's the right word for it? Not surprising. I found it interesting that these allegations are made, and in the end, MLB says, we didn't find any evidence of that. That's almost stunning.
Yeah. I agree. Also, a lot of it would have been her word against his, because there weren't witnesses, even by her own admission, right? When she was making the allegations she did. And that may be part of it too. At the end, you don't know. You can believe whatever you want, but when you do all the due process and go through this, even at a sort of a lower standard than the legal system where baseball is involved. I mean, if it's just, if there aren't other indicators, then where do you go? And so maybe that means that these allegations were exaggerated or false.
Let me read you.
We don't know. We don't know, and I don't want to pretend like I know anything, any of the facts.
Okay, here's what MLB said. The Office of the Commissioner of Baseball has completed its investigation into allegations against Chicago White Sox pitcher Mike Clevinger. The comprehensive investigation included interviews of more than 15 individuals, in addition to Mr. Clevinger and the complainant, as well as a review of available documents, such as thousands of electronic communication records. The Office of the Commissioner has closed this investigation and barring the receipt of any new information or evidence, the Office of the Commissioner will not be imposing discipline on Mr. Clevinger in connection with these allegations. As part of the path forward, Mr. Clevenger has voluntarily agreed to submit to evaluations by the joint treatment boards under the collectively bargained policies and to comply with any of the board's recommendations. MLB will continue to make support services available to Mr. Clevenger, his family, and other individuals involved in the investigation. I found that to be great that MLB did this exhaustive investigation. Great that their support services, but boy, oh boy, you got two diametrically opposed opinions here. One alleging horrific stuff, the other one saying I didn't do anything wrong.
I want to point out a word that was not in any of that stuff that you said that Clevinger has used, the word exonerated. MLB did not use that word. Also, note that the process is continuing. As part of the path forward, Mr. Clevinger has voluntarily agreed to submit to evaluations. Now, that there might not be treatment after that, but evaluations by the joint treatment boards, basically to determine whether they're going to recommend that. That's what she asked for. That's what this could be. So that's all I'm saying is, Rob Manfred is a Harvard-educated lawyer. And he's got a whole bunch of very, very smart guys working for him, lawyers writing this kind of stuff up. They know they're using the language they use intentionally. So we just have to be careful of pretending like we know things we don't on this, and remembering just how serious this is and how much bigger it is than the White Sox in baseball.
Completely agree. All right, Gordon, I will talk with you soon. If we get any breaking news, maybe, I don't know, Juan Soto gets traded to the Cubs, I will call you and we will do an emergency podcast. But
yeah, please call me on that one.
I will. For Gordon and our great staff, I'm David Kaplan. This has been another edition of the Cubs Recap Podcast, available on YouTube. Just search Recap, REKAP on YouTube or anywhere for audio that you get your podcasts. See you next time. Take that.